In the 15th century, a blind German organist unwittingly unleashed hell on earth, sparking a battle that would be waged for centuries. His invention would come to undermine the crown jewel of the conservatory, creating a cosmic rift between guitarists and introducing a question that has gone unanswered to this day.
Do I have to learn how to read sheet music? Hey there, music maker. All jokes aside, this is probably a question you've asked yourself at least once in your guitar playing career. Should I learn to read sheet music? In today's video, we're going to explore some reasons for and reasons against learning this skill. And by the end of the video, hopefully you'll have a better idea if learning to read sheet music is for you. So let's talk about some reasons for learning to read sheet music. One reason that immediately comes to the top of my mind is if you're going to find yourself in musical situations that require sheet music. I know that seems glaringly obvious, but say you want to learn to play with a jazz band, or an orchestra, or a cruise ship band, or a pit orchestra for a musical, or maybe even be a studio musician. Some studio situations do require you to be able to read charts on the fly, so that could be a valuable skill in that scenario. Another reason that you might want to learn to read sheet music is that you want to learn some music that was written for instruments that predominantly use sheet music. Want to dive into the Charlie Parker Omnibook? Want to play those Paganini Caprices? Want to check out some Bach? Will somebody shut this guy up? You get the idea. If you want to play some music for another instrument that already has a large pre-existing catalog of sheet music, you might find it valuable to learn to read. The third reason that you might want to learn this skill is that sheet music allows you to read and internalize music theory in the system of notation that was developed for it. So let's look at this from a different angle. Guitar tablature, at least basic guitar tablature, the kind that you find on the internet on random websites. I'm looking at you, ultimateguitar.com. This type of tablature, the basic kind, doesn't show you anything except for where to put your fingers. No. On the other hand, sheet music shows you rhythm, pitch, articulations, all of these beautiful kind of things that typically weren't included in the most basic kinds of guitar tablature. Now, as we move along, guitar tablature has picked up some of these things from sheet music, but there's still a little bit of information that's missing. For example, when you learn to read sheet music, you learn to associate letter names with the dots as they appear on the lines or the spaces on the staff. All I'm getting at here is that sheet music will allow you to more immediately access those note names. I'm not saying that you can't do that with tablature, but another subpoint for why you might want to learn to read sheet music related to this topic is that when you look at the sheet music, it is much easier to see visual patterns like arpeggios, scalar passages, intervals, and things of that like. For example, when you look at an ascending D minor 7 arpeggio on staff notation, it's really easy to see that those notes are separated by thirds just because of the way that it's visually laid out on the staff. It's not always the case with guitar tablature unless, like I said, you have a really good idea of where those notes are on your guitar's fingerboard. Now, my final point for why you might want to learn how to read sheet music. This one I actually stole from Adam Neely. The big hook on his video was why you should not learn from tab. Now, I think if we spin that on its head and look at it as a positive thing for sheet music, Adam brings up a really good point. There's a psychological trick when trying to memorize complex series of numbers or groupings of any object, and it's called chunking. For example, phone numbers in the United States are 3 digits, and then 4 digits. It would be a heck of a lot harder to memorize those phone numbers if it was just a string of 10 digits, but because you've got 334 there, it's a lot easier for our minds to grasp onto that concept of the phone number. Now, if we apply that to music, sheet music inherently chunks things into discrete groups. We've got measures, which are sometimes used in tablature, right? But inside of those measures, groupings of 4/8 notes are tied together with a beam. Grouping these things together simply means that your mind might memorize the music a little faster, or you might be able to play through that passage when you're sight reading just a little easier. Okay, enough of that positive crap. Let's start talking about why sheet music sucks. So, for reasons not to learn to read sheet music. Point number 1, if you find yourself in musical situations that don't require you to read sheet music, why learn it? I know that's just the exact opposite point that I used in the pros column, but let's think about this, right? I come from a country, rock, and bluegrass background, and I have never once been asked to read a lead sheet in any of those situations. If you find yourself in musical situations like those genres or others like folk, Americana, any of that kind of stuff, you might not find it useful to read sheet music. I would still implore you to learn a bit of music theory, some guitar tab, and the Nashville number system. Those three things are going to allow you to communicate with other musicians pretty easily in those situations where sheet music is not required. All right, reason number 2 for why you shouldn't learn to read sheet music. You can already play things really well by ear. That can be an extremely long, arduous process, but if you've already gone through all of that work and you find yourself in a musical situation where you don't need to read anything off of a page, who cares about sheet music? Crumple that stuff up, pew, toss it out. Also, in the age of holding all of the world's information in your pocket at any given point in time, it's pretty easy to access sounds and learn them direct from the source that way. So we don't rely on sheet music the same way that we did maybe around the turn of the last century when this kind of stuff was all over the place. Another reason that you might not want to learn to read sheet music is that you have a great mental map of your guitar's fingerboard. This day and age, there is a wealth of information on the guitar out there, and because guitar has always had this fraught relationship with sheet music, there are a number of different systems that honestly tackle the idea of memorizing notes on the guitar fingerboard and conveying music on the guitar maybe a little better than sheet music. If you've already learned a lot of those systems, you've already mapped your guitar's fingerboard, you can already play a G major 7 sharp 11 arpeggio at the drop of a hat, you might not need to learn sheet music. There are all of these stories around, right, of famous musicians that people are appalled. He can't read sheet music? But really, those musicians just learned exactly what I described. They have an intimate relationship with their instrument and sound in general. So if you don't need the visual kind of representation in order to play music well, who cares about sheet music? The last thing I'm going to have in the nay column for sheet music is if you predominantly write and play your own music. You might want to document your music in some way, but like I mentioned before, in this digital age, it's a simple matter of pulling out your phone and hitting record on the voice memo app to lay down a demo for any song that you might want. Sheet music might actually even get in the way of you getting those ideas down quicker if it's a cumbersome system for you. So if pulling out your iPhone and hitting record on that voice memo app is a quicker way to get your ideas documented, who the heck needs sheet music? Okay folks, that is by no means a comprehensive list of the reasons for or against learning to read sheet music, but let's take a pause for a minute and see where you are right now. Do you think it's valuable for you to learn to read sheet music after hearing some of those points? Let me give you my 2 cents on the issue. I don't think that I became a worse musician or was bogged down in any kind of way by learning to read sheet music. In fact, for a kid like me who didn't have a musical family, it was a great way for me to access a lot of music that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. That being said, if I was an adult who had never learned to read sheet music and was approaching it for the first time, the length of time required to effectively read sheet music and translate that into the music that I want to play might not be worth it. There are some great systems that have been developed specifically for the guitar that might get you there quicker. A lot of tablature these days has rhythm notation and articulations and all those things that I described before, so tablature might just be enough for you if you want to get straight to playing music. Okay, my friend, I hope that this conversation has helped stir some thoughts in your mind and point you toward whether you think you should or should not learn to read sheet music. I know I said this wasn't a comprehensive list, but if I missed some important reasons to learn or not to learn to read sheet music, drop me a comment below and let me know. Also, before we get out of here, if you found some value in this conversation, hit that subscribe button below and the like button. And if you're interested in learning how to read sheet music, check out the link below to the Guitar Club. Inside of the Guitar Club, I'm going to include a handy little PDF with this video that shows you the basics of reading sheet music. All right, my friend, thanks so much for sticking around. He's out.